I'm Asif Farouk and this is Finextra at Cybos. We're joined here today by Vincent Brennan from the Bank of Ireland. Thank you for joining us. So my first question's got to be, what is your vision for the payments environment in 2020?
On one level, it's a brave kind of question to answer given the pace at which payments and technology and that is changing. But if I was to look forward and look at the direction in which payments and technology are moving, what I envisage is, firstly on the corporate and business side, that banks and payments will have moved out from the traditional cash management and ACH payment piece into electronic invoicing and supply chain finance, and banks will in effect have followed the money in terms of where that's going. And similarly on the retail side, consumers, retailers, etc., that payments will become much more immersed in a e-commerce and m-commerce environment, such that banks aren't simply looking at being involved at the point of payment, but they're involved with retailers and other players in terms of the customer moving right through their shopping, buying, paying and post-purchase piece. At the heart of it, banks will still be required, and the payments professional banks still required to ensure that that happens seamlessly, securely, at speed, etc. But a payments environment per se will kind of just evolve into being part of that wider ecosystem.
So we have all the technology available right now for a really innovative and seamless payments environment. So why do you think we're still not there yet?
Well, I think if you look at the payments landscape across Europe, 75% of payments by number are still in cash, they're in cards, they're in checks and that, and only 1% are in the space that we see as being the really innovative one, but is capturing an awful lot of attention. I think a big reason for that is the industry is very fragmented. It's fragmented within banks, in that if you think about retail payments, for example, it's no longer about the cards part of the bank talking to a cards company. It's about the technology part of the bank, the payments part of the bank, the channel part of the bank, the product part of the bank, mobilising the entire bank into a conversation, which for a small bank like ours, Bank of Ireland, is somewhat easier to do than if you're a large multinational bank. The other side is the industry is very fragmented, so there are 50 to 70 alternative payment providers across Europe, 200 across the world, and you're trying to influence into that space where there are no standards, no schemes, no whatever. So, and to be honest, a lot of the players don't yet feel a need to collaborate. So I think in that journey towards 2020, there's a need to get players much more focused on collaboration, while still being focused on what the customer needs and what the customer is driving.
And how do you think regulation has changed the payments landscape? Do you think it's helped it or hindered it?
The easy answer would be to sit as a payments professional and say, regulation is hindering and that, we're consumed by SEP and whatever. But if you step back and you look at the industry, in that vacuum that's been created by banks being tied up in a lot of the regulatory payments, a lot of the new alternative payment providers have emerged and are providing customers with fast, efficient payments. To some extent they operate in a less regulated environment, but once their volume grows from the current 1% to something more substantial, they'll get the attention of the regulator too. So it's a kind of an either or, and I guess the challenge for banks is how do they move beyond the current regulatory focus and start to leverage the big assets they have to play in that industry, collaborating with some of the other players. But regulation is going to be with us, so it's always going to be a mixed game of help and hinder. You just got to be able to, I think, play a little bit on both sides of that line.